Our reading today is taken from the book of 1 John. This is how we know what love is. Jesus Christ laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for our brothers and sisters. If anyone has material possessions and sees a brother or sister in need but has no pity on them, how can the love of God be in that person? Dear children, let us not love with words or speech, but with action and in truth. This is how we know that we belong to the truth and how we set our hearts at rest in his presence. If our hearts condemn us, we know that God is greater than our hearts, and he knows everything. Dear children, if our hearts do not condemn us, we have confidence before God and receive from him anything we ask, because we keep his commandments and do what pleases him. And this is his commandment, to believe in the name of his Son, Jesus Christ, and to love one another as he has commanded us. The one who keeps God's commandments lives in him and he in them. And this is how we know that he lives in us. We know it by the Spirit that he gives us. The word of the Lord. Those of you who are students would be too young to know who Mother Teresa is. Well, you may have heard of her, but to your parents and to your teacher, she is a household name. That's because she lived during our lifetime. She died just 24 years ago. But she was a famous Catholic nun who spent her entire life serving the poor and underprivileged all around the world. Oftentimes people would approach her with their concerns, and she tells of a story of a man who came to her house late one evening to tell her that he was aware of a family who had 8 children that hadn't eaten in days. Now, Mother Teresa reports that when I came to the family, I saw the faces of those little children disfigured by hunger. There was no sorrow or sadness in their faces, just a deep pain of hunger. I gave the rice to the mother. She divided into 2 and went out carrying half the rice with her. When she came back, I asked her, "Where did you go?" She gave me a simple answer: "To my neighbors. They are hungry also." I was not surprised that she gave. Poor people are very generous, but I was surprised that she knew that they were hungry. As a rule, when we are suffering, we are so focused on ourselves that we have no time for others. Now, this is an observation from a woman who had seen much suffering in her lifetime. She would walk into villages that most people wish didn't exist and would like to ignore. But this is what love in action looks like. And this is what our scripture reading is encouraging us to do today, to love one another, not just with words, but with actions as well. Love sounds easy, doesn't it? It gives us that warm, cozy feeling, and it should. But words without actions, they're meaningless. Love is putting someone else's needs before our own, and it can be challenging, and it can be a sacrifice. After all, isn't that what Jesus did for us? And our scripture reading began by stating that. It said, "This is how we know what love is. Jesus Christ laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for our brothers and sisters." Love calls for action. If you saw someone on the street in the cold and the rain, would they become warm simply because you told them to or you wanted them to? Of course not. It would take you doing something. It would take you giving them a coat or a blanket. And this is what scripture meant when it says, "Dear children, let us not love with words or speech, but with action and truth." The scripture that we've read today, as well as the teachings of our Jesus Christ, link love directly with our obedience to God. They're inseparable. The scripture doesn't just suggest for us to love one another, it commands us to. And this is his commandment, to believe in the name of his Son, Jesus Christ, and to love one another as he has commanded us. The one who keeps God's commandments lives in him, and he in them. Our lesson today is about love. Love that calls for action, or love that puts us into action. It's easy to love God. I mean, we simply have to look at creation and see all that he's made. It's easy to love Jesus. Look at what he's done for us. It's easy to love our friends and our families because they're nice to us and they love us back. But what about our enemies? Is it easy to love our enemies? No, of course not. But is it possible? It is. And we know that because Jesus died for his enemies. Now, your response may be, well, that's Jesus. I'm not doing anything for my enemies. I'm certainly not going to die for them. I want you to pay attention to what I'm about to say next. Did you know that you were once an enemy of Jesus? When Jesus died for you, we were all his enemies. The scripture tells us that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. You see, what God is asking us to do is no more than what he's already done. He is simply asking us to be like Jesus and love one another, even if it costs us something, because that is true love. And that's love that's put into action. Amen.